Okay, so we're going to ask for a little bit of audience participation here. If you would get your cell phones and your flashlights ready. Again, you're dealing with data people here, so we want the data from the audience. Are we ready? Awesome. How many of you actually are data analysts or have data in your job titles? Use your flashlight. Awesome. Thank you. How many of you are programmers, coders, software developers? Awesome. Awesome. How many of you are power users, business analysts in the crowd? Fantastic. How many of you use spreadsheets? I better see them all light up. Fantastic. Awesome. So when we start talking about data analysis and data analytics, sometimes it's really hard for people to understand. It seems like we're mystical creatures, and we're not. We're not wizards or magicians. I think really ultimately a lot of people analyze data and don't even realize it. So let me ask this question, and again, use your flashlight. How many of you have ever tracked your steps with your mobile device or a Fitbit or some type of device? Awesome. Of you who have tracked your steps, how many of you made a decision to make more steps? Great. You should all have data analysts in your job titles. Thanks for doing that with us. So let me start with you guys. Vinay, I want to start where you are today, and then I want to walk us back to how it started. So you say that data is a key ingredient to the rocket fuel behind ships. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you started with that and what that looks like?
Sure. So I started at Shipped about 3 years ago, and we currently have a team of about 51 people spread across Birmingham and San Francisco. It's about 50-50. But when I started, we had 2 people. And really, in less than 3 years to go from 2 to 51 really highlights how important data is to Shipped's everyday operations. So we build things that members and shoppers see in the app, from search ranking to, hey, when should somebody get to the store to deliver on time? We work with the marketing team to look at campaign ROI. We look at churn prediction. We also do a lot of analytics and BI reporting for internal users, because really we have 3 main customers in a way, members, shoppers, and retailers who are like interacting with us. But then the internal users are also consumers of analytics and data. And it's really that data has fueled the marketplace and fuels a lot of the growth in collaboration with the marketing team, operations, product, and so on. And that's really been behind the data team's growth over these last few years.
That's awesome. Awesome. We love your product. Again, backstage we were just discussing how much time I save because I'm able to use Shipped to have my groceries delivered. So I'm grateful for the product, and being a data person, just fascinated by all the data that you deal with and that you could deal with, and I just think that's fantastic. So Matt, thank you so much for jumping in. I know it's rough to like find out, oh wait, in the middle of the night, oh yeah, but I appreciate you being willing to come in. So we talk a lot about data and data analysis, but I think you have something interesting on the other side, which is tools to collect data for different things. So as I mentioned to you, I think not every single thing we need is going to turn into a major software system that's going to have the same budget and same scope and same developers. So tell me how you guys deal with those no-code solutions at EBSCO.
Well, yeah, a lot of times a business leader will have a hunch, and if we don't get to it quick enough, it expires. These questions have a shelf life, and they're expiring. We would go off and do a lot of research and come back a month later, and we're like, hey, look what we did. And be like, that's old news. We don't care anymore. And so we wanted to be able to give us your data, just send it to us in Excel, which I like the question about Excel. It's everyone's warm, cozy blanket. When they get scared, they will always retreat to it. Everybody knows VLOOKUP and things like that. And so we decided to, when people came to us, let's just go to where the data is and how do we get it out quickly, and build applications around it. And so you have tools like Microsoft's Power Apps is come on the market, and then Praveen, who hopefully he'll make it by 2:30 to do his demo and show you the great tool that we've been using. And feel free to hate tweet American Airlines. I think Kevin told me that. Free Praveen or something like that.
Send Praveen on.
Yeah, and I think he has a strict diet, so he's just lumbering through the airport, eating peanuts or something. I don't know. But yeah, we found this platform about 4 years ago, and I think I was kind of hiding from the family around Thanksgiving, and went off into a room. I had 15 spreadsheets from a bunch of sales reps and cobbled them all together, and I was like, okay, well, they can just track what they're doing on a Google Sheet on their phone. So I had been doing that like with my golf scores, handicap, and like you have to kind of scroll in, and I was like, I need this data, I need to do it while I'm here. And then somehow I came across AppSheet, and it creates a layer on top of that that looks just like a beautiful app, and I started using it. I sent it out to the sales rep that Monday, and by like Friday there were like 20 people in it. So I knew we were onto something. IT was terrified, petrified. What the hell have you done? Why are they, when did we release a mobile app? InfoSec was all over it and all this, and so I had to kind of scramble. I was like, Praveen, please tell them this is a real thing. But that was just an example of like data on Monday, prototype on Tuesday, and here's something you can actually work with on Wednesday. And what we saw is our business users, their attention span, we were able to hold it because they saw like something they could touch and feel, and get something back to them quicker, and they partnered with us much better. Coming from IT, that was always, we're like, okay, here's a functional spec. You throw it over the fence, they fill it out, and then there's that feedback loop. I feel like in a lot of scenarios, we've just obliterated that. Like, they send us their spreadsheet, we throw the platform at it, it generates an app. They're like this, don't like that, and then we move on from there.
That's awesome. One of the things we were discussing backstage was the fact that when we allow our power users to create and develop apps, it can sometimes lead to the next big thing in our organizations that our coders, developers, architects can work with because they see it's got legs, they see that it's necessary, and the business users are able to define those technical requirements, which I think is sometimes a gap when we're building tools.
A lot of companies, like we throw around Innovation Hub and things like that, and it's like you feel like it has to be an IT. Like we need to pull our business users in, which citizen developers, and so we've just done things like create a Microsoft team or a Slack site, and so here's what I found. We just pile up the things and the use cases, and it's just like a junk drawer for like, look what I did. And there are some applications, like you said, that are emerging, and that's when IT gets more involved and is like, all right, this is good. We're gonna,
take it and run with it. That's
operationalize it, make it enterprise ready, and fill in all the gaps.
Awesome. So, of course, I've 2 decades of being a data person. Love to talk about data culture and the adoption of data in organizations, and only in the most recent years have we seen it just skyrocket the interest. So I thought it was really interesting when we talked that I asked you specifically about adopting a data culture, and you said you thought it was a symptom of a bigger problem when it's not adopted. And so I would love for you to talk about like your ideas and thoughts on when companies don't have a data culture. Like, what's your thoughts and opinions on that?
Yeah, I think like a lot of things, culture, whether it's around hiring or recruiting or the people, culture can flows a little bit from the top down. And sometimes when there's a clear lack of data culture, sometimes it means that people are afraid to get started in a way. Data helps people make decisions. It helps people who may not necessarily have, like we were describing, there are a lot of people who do data and analytics but aren't necessarily in a data science or analytics field. And it allows them to participate in discussions. And that's where sometimes not having a data culture means that the common phrase is highest paid person's opinion, right? It's a hippo philosophy where that's how we make decisions. And sometimes if you've got data, you can sometimes point to, hey, look, actually our users really do like this other aspect. Or there is actually a product market fit in this other area that we may not have thought of otherwise.
awesome. Do you have any thoughts on, working internally, like building your data culture? Because again, you're building apps, and I know, like, for so long, people they separate applications and data, but they're really so integrated together. You can't separate them. So, what about the data culture and building it up in your organization?
Yeah, so a lot of times we focus on the application. We don't really think about the data, and then afterwards, it's like, oh, we need this report, this one, this one, this one.
This is why I have a living, by the way.
Yes.
So thank you.
But, and so I always said data analytics people, we need to be brought to the table. We need to have a seat at the table. You see a lack of CDOs, chief data officers. If you research Gartner, Forrester, any of those things, you'll see companies are not really recognizing that yet. There's some. I mean, I don't know how progressive Shipped is with that yet, but there's a lot that don't have it. And the role of the CDO is, they say 30 to 40% of it, and monetize the data you have. You're sitting on a wealth of information. Why not find a way to, ethically, of course, turn that into a revenue stream? But as far as culturally, some things we've done is try to celebrate the community. We have more app builders now, so this year I'm planning on doing an Appies Award. So if anybody's a fan of The Office, Michael Scott did the Dundies, right?
The Dundies.
And I've said, here's some of my example awards, and so far they've been shot down because they were Michael Scott-esque. But that don't go in after me.
I should have asked that as a leading question.
Yeah.
How many of you with your flashlights have watched The Office?
Yeah. But so we called them we're going to call them the Appies, right? And so people are like, I want to win an Appie. What do I get? I'm like, I don't know. You'll get the paper shredder. Like, ooh. And so just things like that to excite people, bring them to the table, and maybe you can put you want an Appie on your resume, like have fun with it. And so that's something we're doing. I mean, the main problem we're trying to do is obliterate silos and fiefdoms and towers of knowledge. People that have been at some of these companies for 20 years and they're threatened, and what you kind of have to go in is win them over and share, find out what threatens them about you, diffuse that, and then let them share your success and bring them along, and be humble and be willing to take a back seat and kind of push them out, and they will adopt it. So.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. So, in more lighter news, I read that you are a chess champion. Is that the proper title for that? Yes. This means strategy is definitely your thing, and for data, that is critical. So tell us about your early chess life.
Sure. Before actually entering the data field, I was a professional chess player. I learned at a pretty young age. My mom taught me how to play. She'd not played any tournaments, but it was just something that she enjoyed doing. And she took me to the public library every Friday for the class, and that's how I got started. And I actually, after college, I got into consulting. I found it extremely boring, and so I quit to become a chess player. And then eventually I had always had this itch to do data. I had a degree in statistics, but I didn't feel like the consulting background really used a lot of that. And I figured, hey, I still love chess, but let me try and see if there's a career in statistics and data. And so I came back. I got a job as a marketing analyst, just entry-level marketing analyst at an ad tech company in SF. And I've pretty much not played chess professionally ever since.
Would you say that working in chess, I mean, we have to call it working since you were a professional, do you see some correlations between your earlier life and your current life with strategy and
there's a little
making
bit
moves?
of, I think there's some stuff about strategic thinking and focus and concentration. There's a little bit of, in tournament chess, every game is timed, and you have an amount of time for a set of moves. So you don't get, it's not like 3 minutes per move or anything like that, and you have to budget your time accordingly. And a lot of, we've been talking about, taking an app from Monday to Tuesday to Friday to unlock some value. And sometimes in any sort of business setting, you have to make decisions under uncertain circumstances. You don't know what problems you're going to run into in the future. And a lot of ways with data analysis, you've got to, you've got to figure out what path you want to take right now, because Shipt, for example, collects a lot of data. There's hundreds of thousands of members, there's hundreds of thousands of shoppers, there's retailers, there's more than 1 million products in the catalog. There's a lot of ways that we could go down a rabbit hole, and sometimes we've got to make calls about what do we think is going to be the most fruitful path. And that's actually, that comes up a lot in chess, because you can't solve the problem in front of you on the board. You've got to make some decisions about, given my intuition, given what I've studied, like what should I be going after next? And that comes up all the time in the workplace.
I can just listening to you and thinking, I hope people are tweeting what he's saying here. It's so valuable. Like, you have a certain amount of time and so many moves to make. I think that's critical to all of us in what we do. So I have the great fortune of being an author for LinkedIn Learning, and several years ago they approached me and said, why do you feel like we're not getting a rush of people into data? And I told them, I think it's the same thing that we deal with programming. People, if you start at R, people are going to self-cancel themselves out. They're not going to pursue it. You put words like data and science together, people go, oh, I'm not good at math, and they quit. And there's so many roles in data. And I really think I was on to something. That first version of that course was about 35 minutes long and had about 155,000 people watch it. So now it's a second version, and I'm around 140,000 and in multiple languages. So I think there's definitely an entry-level point to bring people into data that may never grow up to be data scientists. So I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts on the data shortage and what we hear, because we hear it in the news all the time, a lack of data. And I know with Innovate Birmingham, having the fortune to train entry-level data analysts, I'm starting at those core beginnings to give them the ability to go into our workforce. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on what you hear in the news about the data shortages. I thought your responses were fascinating.
Yeah, I think sometimes we confuse a talent shortage with a skill shortage. And really, I don't think there's much of a talent shortage. I'm in Birmingham 1 week every month. And I know people sometimes think, oh, there's not a lot of data scientists in Birmingham. We get the same talk in San Francisco about like, oh, there's not enough data science in San Francisco. And the reality is that people have been doing data analysis of a kind for a long time. Sometimes they're under different job titles, or they're not using the exact same tools that, say, the data science team at Shipt uses. And that's really where I think, like you were saying, there is a softer entry point sometimes into data science and analytics. Probably about a third of the data team at Shipt relies heavily on SQL and Excel, Google Sheets, things like that. There's a lot of stuff you can do with those kinds of tools. I remember I took a programming class back in the day. It was in C++. I never took another programming class for a long time because the barrier to entry there was really high. And so I was discouraged, actually, that I didn't understand what was going on. It took me a couple more years before I was willing to take sort of an introductory level class. We started building like the simplest tools, and that's what got me a little bit more hooked. I would say that there is a huge sort of array of jobs and opportunities within data and analytics that don't require heavy-duty coding. I don't have any graduate degree. Like, you don't have to be a math PhD to get into data science. I think there's actually, if you've got critical thinking skills, if you've got some curiosity, that really actually goes a long way.
Awesome. You have any thoughts about that as well?
Yeah, the curiosity and the creativity, there's a lot of, I think you hear about, I don't know if you've heard it, like a lot of liberal arts and people in the fine arts that have kind of come over to the data field. The tool we use a lot is Tableau, but we use Power BI, but you see a lot of, I've looked at a lot of resumes and it's like, good Lord, there's a lot of fine arts degrees and now they're in data. So people make that jump every day really easily. And I would just say, like, one thing that what we've done is, I guarantee you in your organization there's that one person that has a financial background that's got that hankering to be, on the other side. And we've got a financial person that's building apps now. A year ago, she was not doing that, doing it for her baby shower. to keep up, take a picture, boom, 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 car maintenance, just things like this. And those are little, but when the people feel they can do that, then they step up and they're like, they'll speak up in a meeting and say, hey, I can take this on in the organizational level. They will hit walls because there's still technology and integration and security and performance, but that's when we've paired them with like, a traditional IT person that's a stud that knows SQL inside and out, .NET, all the new stuff, and they're really like we've got we're calling them Batman and Robin, like, and then they're arguing about who's Batman and who's Robin. And Wes, I don't know if you're out there.
It's not much of an argument here when I have that conversation.
Yeah. Well,
Definitely Robin.
Well, we say Wes is Robin because he looks better in tights or something like that.
Easy.
But yeah, that's what we've done with that. But there's people out there all over.
Awesome. So tell us. So we heard a little bit about your start and entry. Tell us how you got into. I mean, what people would not traditionally consider a data role, but you're definitely dealing in data and apps. So how did you get your beginnings? Yeah, it's similar to, I started out consulting with Accenture, drove over to Atlanta, did the job, flew out every week, did that for 7 years, I don't know how long. That's kind of blurry, but you get a lot of experience with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and you see a lot of things, and you experience a lot of different corporate cultures, but the one thing you do see is the silos that have to be obliterated. And then I ended up back in Birmingham, from here originally, and there was a need for just better reporting, faster reporting, nothing fancy, just operational reporting. And that's when I learned you have to look at your customer, each customer, because we're almost an internal consultancy for a conglomerate, and you have to assess their level of maturity before you go in and try to prescribe what the problem is. And so you can Google like BI maturity curve. There's the Gulf. There's all these things, and it tells you how to get from here to here. So there's content of just how to get started, but there's hindsight to insight to foresight, and that's what we always try to talk about. And we say, where are you right now? We're always looking back. Okay, and then some people are like, we have good data, we have good reports, but how do we know what's going to happen next? So kind of framing that and getting in the ballpark to start with will help you have success with your customers, knowing where they are on their journey. All right, so awesome. When we were backstage talking, we were talking a little bit about tool sets, right? So Excel, oh my goodness, I've trained Excel to thousands of people, probably some of you in this audience, Power BI, Tableau, things like that. So I would like for each of you to talk about what tools that you use and what's in your regular tool box when you're dealing with data. And I think we can all agree that if you have a toolbox, you can attack the solution and the problem with whatever fits it best. So love to know like what tools you use. I think the audience might be interested as well.
For sure, and I think I would highlight the point that you just raised about like a toolbox versus just a single language or a single tool where every problem turns into just like, okay, like I've got a hammer, that's the only thing I can use. And I think across the team, we rely really heavily on SQL to get data out of databases. There are people who use BI tools. We use Chartio internally. Similar to Tableau and a lot of these other reporting tools. We use R and Python, we use Excel and Google Sheets. It's really based on, we don't dictate what language or skill, like specific tool skill you have before you come in. Everybody's got a preference on the team for one of those buckets, but they start to get familiar with everyone else. We try and do sort of team learnings to share stuff with everyone, and in that sense, like you start to get immersed in it. It's like, oh, okay, like I don't actually know Python yet, but I'm starting to pick some up by seeing other people's code, and that's a gentle introduction where we don't expect everyone to come in knowing R, Python, SQL, Google Sheets, Excel. We'd be looking for quite a while.
If they're coming from Innovate Birmingham, they're going to have that. Just
Sweet.
FYI,
Okay. All right.
Full plug for
We're
them.
hiring.
Yeah, awesome. All right, tell us about your toolkit.
Oh Lord, so There's a lot of businesses we work with. You name an ERP in the past 20, 30 years, we've seen it. We've pulled data out of it. I ran across Fox Pro a week or two ago.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then I ran.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's things like that. We're seeing, of course, we're using AppSheet a lot, which, again, hate tweet American Airlines because Praveen's delayed, but we've used that as a business case. There's a lot of access, legacy access that are just expiring, and it's hard for the back office, accounting, AR groups like that to get funding because businesses, the other parts of the businesses, outward-facing things, the customer get the funding first, and so we've looked at a few options, and that's how we're using AppSheet now because we can say, hey, who's the access person around here? All right, you need to retool in this. Here's how you do it. And so we've done 1 or 2 road shows around some of our businesses, and they pick it up like that.
That's awesome.
Which is good, but it's kind of like, they're like, all right, get out of here, I got it. And it's sad, it's bittersweet because you know you're successful, but you're also like want to like hang around and see, well, let me do something in there. But there's that. There's Tableau, huge Tableau community. Tableau, there was a wildfire of adoption, and we had to kind of rein it back in, and I think we found the right set now. We've learned our lesson. As with AppSheet, everybody wants to create an app now, so we're putting structure around it. Like, all right, you're the representative from this area. You're in charge of that content. Not just everybody hears a license and go wild, because then you don't know what you're looking at.
Right. So I know when I started my reporting career, I was using Crystal Reports. Anybody heard of Crystal Reports? Woo! Anyway, I couldn't have dreamed of tools like Tableau and Power BI at that point, and Chartio. I'm thrilled, but it also tells me that we have to constantly be learning and preparing for tools to come out. And so let me ask this final question of both of you before I turn it to our audience to ask questions. What are you learning right now? Like, are you actively learning something right now that you want to share?
Actually, that to me is actually the most exciting part. I get to collaborate with a lot of really sharp people at Shipped, and we're working on problems that I like a few years ago I wouldn't have been able to dream of. Like, I'm going to be working on this. Right now, one of the most exciting things we're working on is trying to better understand when products will be out of stock on the shelf. We're a delivery service, and so like if you wanted your Honey Nut Cheerios, you should get your Honey Nut Cheerios. It being in the back room doesn't really help you, and so we're trying to provide a better member experience by being able to predict better when is that off the shelf, when is it going to get restocked, and this is a fascinating problem to me. So
yeah, love it. How about you?
I would say that I've been researching and podcasting, and the way you used to just get a book. Now I'm listening to podcasts on the way to work, but around marketing technology and where marketing spend. That's what a lot of our businesses are asking for, and I had to ramp up on that. I'm far from good at it, but I know what they say. So it's just a lot of times when you go and if you're in a consultant type role, you have to be able to go in, ramp up really quickly, learn acronyms, and learn to speak the language, but the marketing data, is coming from everywhere. And how do you identify a customer that's on Instagram or saying this, or Twitter saying this, and then they're also buying products off your Magento site? How do you tie all that together to get like that one view of the customer, and then target them, and not just target, but like customize the experience and relationship with them? And there's a lot of products off the shelf that we've been looking at, but we're also kind of saying, just kind of trying to build a few things internally just to get a feel for the challenges. But that's one of the things we're researching now.
Awesome. All right, so do I have any questions from the audience? I think we have about 5 minutes that we can dedicate to that. Anybody have any questions or curiosities? Ooh, you have covered all the ground. Do we have one coming? Okay.
There were 2 or 3 people on the data science team. Yeah, there were about, I think, 70 total when I joined. Yeah, I think you named two of the big three right there. We actually, we did use KISS metrics really briefly. We settled on amplitude, which is pretty similar to all of those. I think one of the things that, speaking maybe to the talent or people shortage sometimes, is that there's this idea that everybody's collecting a lot of data, and so people oh, we need a data scientist. One of the first things you often need to do is hook up the data pipelines, so that way you can start doing some analysis. And that's actually how we used Amplitude to sort of unlock, build some of those data pipelines so people could start seeing data very quickly. And the business could start learning from it, gaining insights, because it takes time to, to hire that engineering team to develop those pipelines. And so yeah, we used Amplitude ourselves. We actually still use them.
Excellent question. Thank you for that. Okay, we've got one more up there. We'll let you answer that, but
I think for the audience, the question was really about, or my understanding of the question was about, how do you marry the qualitative experience with sort of the quantitative data? And to me, I think it really gets at, sometimes you hear this word data-driven, and I think the data-driven culture or data-driven philosophy sometimes is that the quantitative is the only aspect that matters. And I think one of the challenges of that is, there's a limit to what we can collect and what we know about sort of our users, and that's where user research, some of the qualitative aspects sometimes, help people both gain a holistic understanding of the space, but also take a leap of faith. Because if all you're doing all the time is optimizing strictly for the data, that can help. If you're like a Google search engine, you probably understand what people are looking for, and a small 1/10 of a percentage point is a big deal. But when you're a company that's starting out, Bill Smith may not have started Shipt if he was looking at all the data. It takes a leap of faith sometimes, and that qualitative approach, I think there's an opportunity here. And so I think there's a real place for both of those. And from my perspective, data at Shipt is really to present sort of that there is a side that is important, the quantitative aspect's important, but my goal personally is not to drown out sort of the qualitative side. We don't use Alteryx ourselves, but Qualtrics. I've heard of them, but I don't think they're also similar as a metrics platform, right? I think we might get a lot out of Amplitude that might be similar to what Qualtrics provides.
all right, I think we have just about hit our time mark, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed being on stage and that the questions were good and fun. And again, Matt, we appreciate you jumping in, and Vinay, we're grateful for you to be here and talking this with us today. And hopefully the audience has enjoyed it, and then I think I'll turn it over to whatever we do next.
Thank you all.
Thanks.